After they finished eating, Jake volunteered to clear the table and wash the dishes. Meanwhile, David and the others went outside, except for Jake. They stood on the veranda, breathing in the crisp mountain air as they surveyed the aftermath of the battle with Laika. The landscape was marred by a recent landslide, and they noticed people on the opposite side of the mountain, tiny figures in the distance, watching the scene with curiosity. "Lewis, it really looks like a natural landslide you created." "Thank you," David said, glancing at his friend. The air was filled with the scent of pine and freshly turned earth. Lewis responded with a smile, "But tomorrow I still need to report to the city to give my statement. The road needs to be restored to normal in a way that doesn't raise suspicion. And I need to sell the property. The Mondragons will keep coming back," David added with a sigh, his breath misting in the cool air. "I might not be able to return immediately after I leave tomorrow. I need to go to Shanta's place to finish some business there. I also need to arrange the burial for Shanta's servants who were caught in the mansion's fire. Their families are waiting," he explained, his voice heavy with responsibility. The group nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Gabriel and Jacob exchanged looks, seeming to communicate silently. "Jacob, why didn't you avoid Laika's kiss?" Gabriel asked, breaking the silence. David and Lewis looked at them, intrigued. "It's a good thing Gabriel managed to snatch the vial," David interjected. "Who could resist someone like Laika?" Lewis joked, causing everyone to laugh, the tension easing momentarily. Jacob laughed and shook his head as his friends teased him. "David, I also need to leave tomorrow. I'm heading back to the north. There's trouble there, likely caused by the Mondragons. After I dropped off Samuel, I received a message about mysterious disappearances and crimes in the north. Someone needs to take care of it," Lewis said seriously to his companions. "I'll come with you, Lewis. By tomorrow, my burns and wounds should be healed," Gabriel said, looking at David and Lewis. David nodded, understanding their responsibilities. Jake will take you to his place to start Shanta's training. Then Jake need to bring Marco and Justin back here. Once Jake and you are with Chanty, I'll send them to the south. They have business to handle in the inner world," David instructed. Jacob nodded, aware of their duties in the four corners of the world. They needed to keep their actions and true identities hidden from the public, along with their powers. But deep down, Jacob struggled with his feelings. For the first time in his life, he felt something intense for Chanty. How could he control his own heart? It was harder to fight one's emotions. As he gazed into the distance, his thoughts were a mix of joy and sorrow. He was happy to see Chanty again, but sad that he couldn't express his feelings, forbidden by their protocol. Why did he have to feel this way for Chanty when so many women pursued him, both in their kingdom and the outer world? Women who were beautiful and desirable chased after him, yet his heart is so elusive for them. Lost in thought, Jacob didn't notice Gabriel watching him. So deep were his thoughts that he didn't see David and Lewis enter the house. Gabriel and Jacob stayed outside. Jake observed Jacob from the balcony, wondering what troubled him. Jacob, once as lively as Justin, was now quiet and thoughtful. Jake was puzzled by his friend's change, pondering what could be weighing on Jacob's mind. Jake was very sad because his horse, Jay, was lost. Laika's henchmen captured and killed their 7 horses. None of their horses survived. Jake saw Gabriel go back inside while Jacob stayed outside. Jacob looked around until their eyes met. He tried to read Jacob's mind but couldn't. Jacob came to the balcony and stood beside him, looking in the same direction. "It's sad that none of the horses survived. Laika's henchmen chased them, and they panicked when they arrived," Jacob said, looking at the broken horse stable. Jake sighed deeply, the weight of their losses pressing down on him. "Tomorrow at dawn, I'll take David. When I come back, we'll go to my house. You take care of Shanta there. She hasn't recovered yet. She was feeling sick and weak when we arrived. Teleporting doesn't suit her well. Our bodies are different. She takes longer to recover," Jake said, his voice filled with concern for Chanty. Jacob smiled weakly because he, too, wasn't immune to Jake's teleportation power. He also felt sick after teleporting with Jake. They didn't like traveling with Jake because it made them feel unwell, but they recovered quickly due to their powers, just like their wounds and injuries healed fast. Jacob, I've noticed you're always deep in thought since you arrived. What's bothering you? Jake asked. Jacob looked at him with a puzzled expression. Me? Nothing, Jake. We always have a lot on our minds, right? The whole world's problems are our problems, Jacob replied with a laugh that didn't convince Jake. He didn't respond and looked away into the distance. You do have a problem, but I won't ask anymore, he said, turning away from Jacob without warning. Jacob was used to Jake's behavior and watched him go inside. He stayed outside, watching people investigate the landslide area. More people gathered, curious about what happened. He thought about going inside as many were using telescopes to see David's property, especially since he was outside. When he entered, he saw David in the living room, reading some papers. He passed by David and went to the guest room, but when he opened the door, he saw Jake lying on the bed. Their eyes met, surprised, he closed the door. Jake had gotten there first. He went back outside to the guest house where Gabriel was. The guest house had 5 rooms, and he knew Louis was there too. Inside, he found Louis and Gabriel sitting on the sofa bed, watching the news. He joined them and watched the news about the landslide, which was live on TV. At dawn, Jake took David to Chanty's vineyard. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the sprawling fields. The vines, heavy with grapes, sparkled with morning dew. The scent of earth and grapes filled the air, mingling with the crisp morning breeze. David vomited, his face pale. Jake waited for David to finish vomiting or for his dizziness to subside. Okay, David, I'll go now. I still need to take Gabriel and Louis going north, Jake said to David, who nodded in response. After here, I'll go to the city to visit Samuel. I'll ask Robert to take me, David said. Return Justin and Marco to the south once you were settled at your mansion. Justin has a lot of work to do in the south. Thanks in advance, Jake, David added, and Jake understood everything. Copy, Jake replied. Be careful not to be followed by Vasper, David added. Jake nodded seriously, his face showing his determination. Jake left David there, promising to return soon, and then disappeared into the morning mist. After leaving David, Jake returned to David's villa and transported Gabriel and Louis. The landscape shifted from the lush vineyard to a rugged, mountainous region as Jake teleported them to the north. Gabriel and Louis, now fully healed from their wounds and burns inflicted by Leica, thanked Jake. However, the teleportation left them feeling sick, like motion sickness. They vomited but recovered after a few minutes. Once they felt better, Jake teleported back to David's city home. The bustling metropolis was alive with activity, the streets filled with people and the sounds of commerce. He visited Samuel, Laura, and Lorena, who were staying at David's house. The modern home was an oasis of calm amid the urban chaos, with sleek lines and expansive glass windows offering views of the cityscape. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. Samuel, Laura, and Lorena gathered around Jake, their faces filled with curiosity and concern. Jake reassured them that everything was under control and promised to visit again when he had more time. He told them that David would come soon. After a heartfelt goodbye, Jake teleported back to David's villa. He found Jacob waiting inside the living room. Without a word, they both prepared for the next journey. The air crackled with energy as Jake activated his teleportation power. In an instant, they were transported to Jake's mansion. When they arrived at Jake's mansion, Jacob collapsed and began vomiting due to the dizziness he felt. He coughed and continued to vomit, clutching his chest. Jake handed him a tissue box, which Jacob took and used to wipe his mouth. "Oh, I hate this," Jacob said as he continued vomiting and wiping his mouth. Jake just watched him, knowing that Jacob would feel better soon. "How did you manage to have a tissue box ready so quickly? Was this prepared in advance?" Jacob asked while vomiting, though he was slowly starting to feel better. "Yes, I knew what would happen when we arrived," Jake replied. Jacob laughed at Jake's response. Jake was used to it, so he was always prepared, Jacob thought. As he looked around, Jacob's nausea started to subside. "You always seem to know what to expect," Jacob said, standing up and brushing himself off. "It's part of the job," Jake replied with a smirk. "Now, let's get you settled. Shanty's waiting for us." The mansion stood majestically on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The moonlight bathed the scene in a silver glow, highlighting the grand architecture of the estate. The waves crashed against the rocks and shore below, adding a rhythmic soundtrack to the breathtaking view. The vast gardens surrounding the mansion were filled with exotic flowers, their colors vibrant even in the moonlight. Jake and Jacob walked through the gardens, the fragrance of the flowers mingling with the salty sea air. They entered the mansion, the interior as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, elegant furnishings, and walls adorned with priceless art created an atmosphere of timeless luxury. Jacob's eyes wandered around, taking in the grand entrance that led to an expansive foyer. The marble floors gleamed under the chandelier's light. The walls were adorned with artwork, and the air smelled faintly of jasmine. They walked through the luxurious mansion, the decor a blend of modern elegance and classic charm. The soft hum of the ocean waves could be heard in the background, adding to the serene atmosphere. Chanty was in the mansion. When they entered the living room, Chanty was there, resting on a plush sofa. Her face lit up when she saw them, still sick and weak but happy to see Jake and Jacob. She greeted them with a tired but genuine smile. Jacob felt a mix of emotions, struggling to hide his feelings for Chanty. No one noticed his inner turmoil as he tried to maintain a calm exterior. "Welcome back," Chanty said softly, her voice filled with relief. Jacob felt a pang of emotion as he watched her. He struggled to hide his feelings, maintaining a calm exterior. "It's good to see you, Chanty," he said softly. "It's good to see you too, Jacob," she responded with a gentle smile. "We're glad to be back," Jake replied, looking at her with concern. "How are you feeling?" "I'm getting better," Chanty assured them. "It's just taking a little time." Jacob watched her, his heart aching. He was relieved to see her but also struggled with the feelings he tried so hard to conceal. "Where are Marco and Justin?" Jake asked, looking around the living room. "They are in the kitchen cooking dinner," Chanty replied. "Oh, okay. David has an errand for them, so I'll go get them," Jake said. "Jacob, if you want to change clothes, go to your room. Your things are still there as usual," Jake said to Jacob, who nodded and smiled. "I'll leave you here. I'll change, and then we'll have dinner," Jake said. His companion nodded and went to his room. Jacob and Chanty stayed in the living room. "I'll go to the kitchen to help Justin," Chanty said softly to Jacob. "I'll go with you," Jacob said, and they went to the kitchen together to help Justin and Marco with whatever they were doing. Jake's kitchen has a modern design, similar in size to David's kitchen. However, David's kitchen has a touch of royalty, while Jake's is modern and chic. When they arrived at the kitchen, Justin and Marco were laughing and greeted Jacob. They said they felt Jake and Jacob's presence but didn't come out because they couldn't leave the food they were cooking. "Hey, Jacob, welcome, bro, help us so we can finish quickly." "Chanty must be hungry," Marco said with a laugh. The four of them laughed and cooked together. "Chanty, Jake has no house help here. Did you know he does all the maintenance himself? He only comes home to clean," Justin told Chanty. Chanty smiled at Justin's comment, impressed by Jake's habits. "I don't know why he doesn't hire a cook or a cleaner. We do all the work here when we're around. We're not guests. He likes it when we're here to cook and water his plants," Jacob said with a laugh. Chanty laughed at Jacob's story, thinking he seemed to be complaining. Chanty's worries about David faded for a moment. "By the way, Justin, you need to go back. David needs you for something in the south after dinner," Jacob said. Marco and Justin agreed. Chanty wondered why Justin had to leave so soon after arriving. "We can't go back to David's house. Laika already knows that place," Jacob said, and Chanty felt a chill hearing Laika's name. "After you left, Laika attacked again. She escaped and is stronger than the last time we fought her," Jacob added seriously. Justin and Marco continued cooking, unfazed by Jacob's story. but Chanty felt her fear and worry return. "Chanty, David went to your vineyard to take care of your workers and their families," Jacob said. "Arnold and your horse are fine, but they can't be moved. They'll stay at the vineyard until you can return." "Yes, Jacob. David already told me." "Thank you," Chanty replied sadly. Chanty sighed deeply, and her companions heard her. "Cheer up, Chanty. Our cooking will taste bitter if you're sad," Marco said, making Chanty laugh weakly. Chanty forced herself to join in Justin and Jacob's jokes. She was glad her companions remained positive despite everything. It felt awkward for her, being the only woman among the men, like she had many older brothers and bodyguards. Yet, she still felt uncertain about her future. Jacob felt great joy seeing Chanty laugh. Her laughter was his weakness. It made her even more beautiful, especially her eyes. He tried hard not to let Justin and Marco notice his feelings. Why did he have to meet Chanty in this situation, where he wasn't allowed to like her? They finished cooking and Jake arrived, and they all worked together to set the table in the dining area. They ate together, enjoying their meal, and afterward, Justin and Marco prepared to leave for the south. Meanwhile, Jacob and Chanty cleaned up and washed the dishes together. Although Jake had a dishwasher, they chose to wash the dishes by hand. Jacob was overjoyed to be with Chanty, even in such simple tasks. He didn't want Chanty to work, but she insisted on helping, even with the simple task of washing dishes. Jake entered the kitchen to tell them that he was taking Justin and Marco to the south. As Jake watched Chanty and Jacob, he noticed something but chose to ignore it. Chanty stepped out of the kitchen to see them off. She saw Justin and Marco in the living room with Jake. The men looked handsome, especially Jake, who had his long hair down and wore a black t-shirt and tattered tight pants. Jake loved tattered tight pants. But in Chanty's eyes, Jacob was the most handsome of them all. Her companions looked like models or actors. She felt proud to have such responsible, kind, and handsome friends. She thought of David and his friends as her big brothers. Justin and Marco just smiled at her and waved goodbye. And Jake looked into her eyes seriously with a grin on his lips. Jake used his teleportation power to take Justin and Marco away. Chanty watched them disappear, feeling a mix of emotions. She returned to the kitchen where Jacob was finishing up. "Well, it's just the two of us now," Jacob said, smiling at Chanty. Chanty smiled back. "I guess so. Thank you for helping me." Jacob shook his head. "No, thank you, it's nice to have company." They continued tidying up the kitchen, enjoying each other's presence. The atmosphere was warm and comfortable. Jacob treasured these moments, knowing they were rare. "So, what do you want to do now?" Jacob asked. Chanty thought for a moment. "How about we watch a movie?" Jacob's face lit up. "That sounds great. Let's pick a good one." They moved to the living room, scrolling through the movie options. Chanty chose a romantic comedy, and they settled on the couch to watch. As the movie played, they laughed together, and Jacob felt his heart swell with happiness. Being close to Chanty, seeing her smile, and hearing her laugh made everything feel right. It's like a music to his ears. As the night went on, Jacob struggled with his feelings. He knew he wasn't supposed to like Chanty, but he couldn't help it. She was kind, beautiful, and made him feel alive. He tried to focus on the movie, but his thoughts kept drifting back to her. How could he hide his feelings when every moment with her made them stronger? Chanty noticed Jacob's occasional glances and felt a flutter in her chest. She enjoyed his company and felt safe with him. She had always seen him as a friend, but tonight something felt different. She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the movie and the joy of the moment. As the credits rolled, Jacob sighed, knowing the evening was coming to an end. "That was fun," he said, turning to Chanty. "Yes, it was," Chanty agreed. "Thank you, Jacob. I needed this." "Any time," Jacob replied, his heart aching with unspoken words. They stood up, and Jacob walked Chanty to her room. "Good night, Chanty." "Good night, Jacob," she replied, smiling warmly at him. Jacob watched her disappear into her room, feeling a mix of happiness and longing. He returned to his own room, lying on his bed, and stared at the ceiling. How could he keep his feelings a secret? How could he be around Chanty without falling deeper in love? These thoughts plagued him as he drifted off to sleep, dreaming of a future where he could be honest about his feelings. The next morning, Jacob woke up early. He decided to take a walk in the garden to clear his mind. He watered the plants, the cool morning air and the scent of flowers helped calm him. As he walked, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around to see Chanty approaching, a smile on her face. "Good morning, Jacob," she greeted him. "Good morning, Chanty," he replied, feeling his heart race. "Just woke up and saw you, so I thought I'd join you," she said, standing beside him. They walked together in silence for a while, enjoying the peacefulness of the garden. Jacob stole glances at Chanty, admiring her beauty in the soft morning light. He wished he could tell her how he felt, but he knew it wasn't the right time. "Jacob, I've been thinking," Chanty said, breaking the silence. "About last night. I had a great time. It's been a while since I felt so happy." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," Jacob said, his heart pounding. Chanty looked at him, her eyes filled with warmth. "Thank you for being such a good friend." Jacob smiled, but inside he felt a pang of sadness. "Always, Chanty." He continued walking while watering the plants, each lost in their thoughts. Jacob knew he had to be patient. One day, he hoped, he could tell Chanty how much she meant to him. For now, he cherished every moment they spent together. "I'll leave you for a moment, Jacob. I'll just make some coffee and cook our breakfast." "Do you drink coffee in the morning?" Chanty asked, her voice warm and inviting. The morning light streamed, casting a soft glow on her face. Jacob looked at her, his eyes reflecting the gentle sunlight, and smiled, his lips curling in a way that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. He nodded silently. "What kind of coffee do you like?" "I know how to make it," Chanty added, her tone enthusiastic and eager to please. "Cappuccino," Jacob replied, his voice smooth, accompanied by a sincere smile. "Okay, wait here while I make it." "I like cappuccino too," Chanty said, grinning as she turned on her heel, her movements graceful and fluid. She walked towards the kitchen, her figure outlined against the soft light filtering through the glass wall. A few minutes later, Chanty returned, carrying 2 steaming cups of cappuccino. The rich aroma of the freshly brewed coffee filled the air as she placed the cups on the stone table in the middle of the garden. "Jacob, here it is," she called out to him. Jacob was nearby, tending to the plants near the cliff that overlooked the vast, shimmering sea. The salty breeze ruffled his hair, and the morning sun kissed his skin, giving him a golden hue. Jacob signaled his thanks with a smile, his eyes twinkling with gratitude, and walked back to the table. He picked up his cup, savoring the warmth between his hands, and took a sip. The creamy froth of the cappuccino mingled with the rich espresso, creating a perfect harmony of flavors. He smiled at her, his eyes sparked with gratitude and awe for the woman in front of him. "It's so good, Chanty," he said with enthusiasm. She just smiled back and she then headed back inside, moving with a confident grace. It was good that she knew how to cook. As a child, she had spent hours in the kitchen, watching their cook with wide-eyed curiosity. She learned even the simplest dishes, honing her skills and developing a love for cooking, especially his specialties. After Chanty finished cooking, they enjoyed their breakfast outside in the garden. The view was breathtaking, with the large infinity pool reflecting the clear blue sky and the expansive white sand beach stretching out below the cliff. The sound of the waves crashing gently against the shore was soothing, a natural symphony that added to the serene ambience. Jake's house was a marvel of design, blending seamlessly with its surroundings. It was impressive that Jake maintained the area himself, every detail meticulously cared for. Chanty thought about how introverted Jake was, finding solace and satisfaction in maintaining his home. "Jacob, isn't it impossible that Jake maintains his mansion by himself? Why doesn't he hire someone to take care of it?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Jacob smiled, continuing to eat before pausing and looking into her eyes. His gaze was intense yet kind, his eyes a captivating shade that seemed to always smile. Jake is an introverted person, Chanty. One of his ways to relax or spend his rest day is by maintaining his house. Given its size, a week isn't enough to clean it all, but he doesn't pressure himself. Sometimes, we help him voluntarily when we're not busy. Only we can visit his house. Now, you too, Jacob explained, his voice steady and reassuring. David's houses have impressive interior and exterior designs, but I prefer Jake's. My house was like this before it burned down, Chanty said, her voice tinged with sadness. Her eyes, usually bright and lively, dimmed with the weight of her memories. Jacob noticed, his expression softening. He gave her a sympathetic look, feeling the sorrow that Chanty felt. Sorry if this brought back sad memories, Chanty, he said softly, his voice gentle and filled with understanding. No, I'm sorry for bringing up the past while we're eating, Chanty replied, a blush creeping up her cheeks as she felt embarrassed about showing her emotions. They ate in a comfortable silence, the kind that only close friends could share, until they finished and cleaned up their meal. Chanty, if you're not busy, let's go swimming at the beach, Jacob suggested, his excitement evident in his voice. Sure, Jacob. You go ahead, and I'll follow, Chanty agreed, a smile spreading across her face. She needed the seawater to refresh her spirit and shake off her fatigue. All right, I'll go first, Jacob said, grabbing a towel and changing into shorts and a tank top. He headed down the stone steps to the beach, his movements confident and eager. The stairs, located beside Jake's house, led to a large infinity pool that seemed to merge with the horizon and down to the pristine white sand beach. The sight was breathtaking, the kind of beauty that stirred the soul. This was exactly the kind of house Chanty dreamed of, her perfect sanctuary. As she watched Jacob descend the stairs, she knew that moments like these were to be cherished, adding to the rich tapestry of her memories.